to sustain. Renegotiating our position was my attempt to address that, and putting the outcome to a public vote was not just fair and not just overdue, but necessary and, I believe, ultimately inevitable. I know others may take a different view, but I couldn't see a future where Britain didn't hold a referendum. So many treaties have been agreed, so many powers transferred, and so many promises about public votes made and then not fulfilled. With all that was happening in the EU, this could not be sustained. Of course, there are many who welcome the referendum, and that was reflected in the overwhelming vote for it in Parliament and in the high public turnout when the time came. Far from being a flash in the pan, the referendum was announced more than a year before the 2014 European elections and more than 2 years before the general election. It was set out clearly in a manifesto that delivered an overall majority in the House of Commons. But I know there are those who will never forgive me for holding it, or for failing to deliver the outcome, Britain staying in a reformed EU, that I sought. I deeply regret the outcome and accept that my approach failed. The decisions I took contributed to that failure. I failed, but in my defence, I would make the case, as I think all Prime Ministers have, that especially when you're in the top job, not doing something or putting something off is also a decision. And that is the thing that stands out for me when I look back over this time. Decision-making. A Prime Minister these days is constantly in contact with their office by email, text and messenger services, and is therefore making decisions, large and small, almost by the minute. They also, as I did over the EU referendum, consider the biggest decisions over months, even years. It's the most difficult, most stressful, yet most rewarding part of the job. In many ways, it is the job, and I almost called this book Decisions for that very reason. Indeed, so many of Britain's problems we found when we came to power in 2010 were a result of decisions that had been put off. The government had spent and spent, while the deficit and debt were left to grow and grow. Low pay and high taxes had been plugged by an ever-increasing benefits system. Educational standards were sliding, but masked by increasingly generous grades. More and more people were going to university, but the system was becoming unsustainable. Big calls on infrastructure were avoided, while new superpowers raced ahead. Immigration went up and up, but without the control, integration and public consent that is needed to sustain such rapid changes to our society. Businesses were hamstrung by regulation, and economic growth was excessively concentrated in the southeast. And yes, as I've said, Britain's unstable position in a changing EU was the biggest can kicked down the longest road. In order to confront these issues, we had to do several bold things. We had to modernise the party and make it electable once again, not with a modest change to our image, but a full-blown overhaul of who we were, the issues we addressed, how we conducted ourselves, and what we had to say to people in 21st century Britain. Then we had to do something just as bold, form the first coalition government since the Second World War, unpalatable for many in our party, and make it endure, impossible, according to many commentators. We then had to fix the country's finances after the worst crash in living memory. At the same time, we were bringing troops home from Afghanistan, while facing down security threats at home and around the globe. None of these things was inevitable. They happened because we made them happen. Indeed, many things happened, as this book will show, simply because I got a bee in my bonnet about an issue and got the bit between my teeth, and, like most modern politicians, mixed my metaphors along the way. The youth volunteering programme, National Citizen Service, is something I'm often stopped about in the street, and it was an idea I dreamt up many years ago. Technology is changing our world for the better in healthcare, finance, development, transport, the environment, and much else besides. And partly because of the support we gave in government, the UK is in the vanguard of all things tech. The UK is also leading the world in dementia research and care, and putting it on the global agenda all started when, as an MP, I realised the extent and implications.